Hello everyone, and welcome back to the garage. Today we're going to get started on part 2 of the restoration on this Bally Strange Science pinball machine from 1986. In this video we're going to be tackling all of the Playfield problems, and depending on how long that takes, we will start the Playfield disassembly and restoration as well. So let's get started. So let's recap what's wrong with this machine. First thing, and probably the most annoying thing, is that the ball saver is broken. I have the other piece, I just need to epoxy it back on and then that should work. There's some missing posts, as you can see. I'm not able to find the one that goes here. It's a little plastic piece. There's another one kind of up here somewhere. Right there underneath this plastic. There's a screw that goes through this plastic piece into the playfield. There's supposed to be another one right there, and I'm not able to find that piece anywhere. The one that goes here is just a regular pinball post with a little rubber on it, which I do have. It just looks like this, so that's easy to find. There are also two of these blue plastic posts that are missing from here and here, but I do have some replacement posts that I'll be able to put there, and so that will be easy to fix. The switch to go up the anti-gravity ramp likes to get stuck when the ball doesn't go all the way up, so what'll happen is when the ball goes up halfway and then back down, this little round part of the switch, it will get stuck on top of this bracket here. So it'll be permanently closed like this, and the game will complain about it every time you turn it on. And sometimes in its more severe state, the ball will get stuck in there. It will go up, come back down, and since the switch is stuck, the ball can't move past it. So I have to take the glass off and get the ball out. That has happened to me so many times. And that is caused by two different problems. The first one is there is a post on the left side of the anti-gravity ramp that is slanted like this, and I looked under the playfield and the screw is still screwed in perfectly. So what we have going on here is a bent screw. You can see right here, the screw, I can tell, is supposed to go through the bracket here first and then into the post, but the screw itself is bent, so that's why this post is slanted. So I'll have to fix that. And then the other problem is the bracket itself is bent on the other side. So what I think should happen is this little round part of the switch should be either outside this bracket here or just farther back, because as you can see, it rubs right against that bracket, and like that, that's how it will get. It'll get stuck just like that. So that part of the switch is too close to this other bracket that holds up the ramp. So we'll have to fix that. And then there's the issue with the pop bumpers. Sometimes when the ball hits specifically this one, it'll thump like 10 times real fast. And it doesn't always have to be this bumper that triggers it. This is just the one that thumps the most. I've noticed that if I do the bottom bumper, it'll sometimes make this bumper thump. So I think we just have some switches that are really close together. And you can see when I'm doing this bumper, this one is also thumping. We gotta fix that. There's a few lights in this game that aren't working, and I think it is due to bad transistors, because earlier on I was able to get the A light in the word lab to just dimly light. It would never flash like this one is doing, and then this one doesn't work at all. I don't think this one's a transistor problem. The A light, I believe, is because this game, each transistor drives two different lights. And if you look through the manual, you can see which transistor drives which two lights. You can see down here, the Playfield 9X light is also not working. Both this light and the A light are driven by the same transistor, and I have never been able to get those to work. But what I did go ahead and do off camera real quick is change a few of the LEDs underneath the Playfield. It doesn't look any different, but I changed out the 4 bubble bonus lights on the left and the right, as well as the voltmeter lights, because the previous owner had frosted LEDs under them, which is completely fine. But I had a stash of these type of LEDs that had been sitting for many years, and I thought those would be a much better fit because they're more directional, and they would make a perfect candidate for these tiny little Playfield inserts. And the reason I wanted to change those out is so that I could use the frosted LEDs for bigger playfield inserts like these, or just lights above the playfield. So I wanted to change those out so I could have frosted LEDs. But when I was changing those out, one of the transistors died before my very eyes. So when I was changing these voltmeter lights, I noticed that after I was done, the 700 light was not working, and it was working before, and I tried everything and could not get it to work. So I went ahead and looked in the manual to see what transistor drove this light, and I looked to see what other light that transistor drove, and it happened to be the number 7 on the bonus indicators. Look at that. It's not working. I didn't touch that one. So obviously one of the transistors on the CPU board in the back box died, and so I'll have to replace that one as well to get those 2 lights back. And there's also a few burned out flash bulbs that didn't get upgraded when this machine was upgraded to LEDs, so those will get replaced when I disassemble the playfield. But those are all the problems this machine has now. So let's go ahead and start solving them one by one. If you watch Joe's classic video games on YouTube, this would be one of those instances where he would say, "Come on, people." This is the section of the wire harness that goes down into the playfield, and right now, when you open and close the playfield, it'll rub right against these wires because they're not in the little plastic piece right here. So I'll go ahead and put these back. And these 2 little wires here connect via heat shrink to this wire, and that goes to a switch on the bottom of the playfield. Those come from the modification board. So I'm going to make that a little bit nicer looking. And there we go. No more rubbing on the wires. It was doing it pretty severely before, so that is fixed. And the wire that I was talking about is this wire right here. It's wrapped along with the main harness, and it goes up to a switch in the plunger. Now, this is not original to the machine. I've looked at other pictures of Strange Sciences, and they do not have this switch here. So this was an addition by Rick. And you can see he did a pretty good job installing it. It looks original. He put heat shrink on the wire ends where they're soldered to the switch. He screwed it in nicely. He carved out this little hole, and it looks really nice. So he did a good job making his modification board and installing that switch. So I'm just going to leave all of that as is. So let's start with some under the playfield problems. The first thing that I want to do is solve the ball saver problem. This is the coil for it right here. And it's not an original coil. It's made by a company called Quality Coils. And this red piece here is the one that actually kicks the ball. And if that were still in one piece, I would have to go ahead and remove the entire coil assembly. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws that hold that in. And I might still have to do that, but for now what I'm going to do is just remove the coil itself so that I can get this red piece out and epoxy the other half back on. Well, in theory that would work. There's just too much wiring right behind it, so I'll have to remove the whole thing. And then I should be able to slide this out. There we go. All right, so after removing the coil, we're left with just this. Now I went ahead and disassembled this piece. You just have to remove these 2 screws here, and then this little metal part can come out. And then I was able to clean everything. So now it's all cleaned up. I have the broken piece here, and we're gonna epoxy it back to right there where it goes. All right, so I have it epoxied on, so I'm gonna hold this here for a little bit, and then I'm gonna give it about a day to fully cure, and then we'll put it back in the machine and see how it goes. And that is what it looks like after the epoxy is fully cured. I got it back in the correct spot, and as you can see, it survived me putting a rubber on it, so it must be pretty strong. So let's go ahead and put the mechanism back in the machine. And now it's back in the machine. You can see we have a ball saver back in its proper spot. So let's go ahead and turn on the game and see how it performs. All right, let's see if it survives kicking a pinball. It does. I wasn't able to save it, but you can see it's able to kick the ball and it didn't break. There we go. Works perfectly. So that is the first of the major problems fixed. So now I want to go ahead and fix the switch for the anti-gravity ramp. And to get better access to that switch, I'm going to have to take off the plastic piece for the ramp. And it looks like it's just these 3 screws and then remove this nut, and then this plastic piece can come off. And yep, there we go. Simple as that. So you can see the problem we're having. This post is just way bent out of shape. And look how loose it is. It's not even in there. I'll go ahead and remove it and see how bad the screw is. And look at what it's doing when I'm trying to remove it. That is how bent it is. That's insane. Wow. Look at that. That is crazy. And it looks like that screw has been bent for a really long time, because you can see it has dug into the playfield pretty severely. Go ahead and zoom in on that. See that? That shows you that has been like that for a very long time. And I also noticed that this metal piece is loose, so that screw's not in all the way. And this plastic piece is loose, which means this cover here is not on all the way. So, gotta tighten some stuff up in this machine. And as luck would have it, I went through my stash of screws and managed to find a screw that was essentially identical to the other one. It was just a few threads longer, which is perfectly fine. It can be a little longer. And I test fit it in the hole because it goes into a little thing with metal threads in it, and it screws in there perfectly fine. So that is what we're going to use to screw the post back in. And I was actually able to bend the other side of this bracket here just by moving it in place. But what I need to do is loosen this screw a little bit, because I need to push it in that direction a little bit without it bending again. So the idea is loosen this a little bit. That way I can move this to where it needs to be. Then I can line up the post right there, put this over the top, and then put the screw and washer back in and screw it down. And I'm not going to fully tighten that just yet, because I need to align this bracket so I can put the ramp plastic back on. But with the way it is now, you can see it is no longer getting stuck. This round part here is no longer rubbing against the bracket. So that is how it should be. So I'm going to do a little test fit here. Just kind of put this back on. And I might be able to screw that in with it on. All right, so that's about where I want it. So now I can go ahead and tighten up the rest of the screws. And look at that. Nice and tight, no longer slanted. And no more getting stuck. So that's fixed. Let's go ahead and reassemble it and test it out. And if we simulate a weak shot up the ramp, no longer stuck. It actually comes back down and the switch goes to the correct spot. So that is fixed. That will no longer get stuck. So there we go. That's another annoying problem fixed. All right, and as for the pop bumpers, what I went ahead and did is I went under the Playfield and I just bent the switches out for the bumper skirts just a tiny little bit, and that fixed the problem. So now if I push the left bumper here, it does only the left bumper. And the one on the right, just the right bumper, and the one on the bottom, just the bottom. And I just went ahead and did a play test, and the bumpers operated perfectly normally. So just those switches were a little bit too close together. So that was a very simple problem. And earlier on, when I was under here, I also fixed a very big structural problem. Right here we have the two Playfield brackets, and the one that was here was completely broken. It's split in half, and I have the original broke right in half. And so this part was the only part that was screwed in. And so the Playfield was only being held up by this one bracket. And if that bracket were to fail, the whole front of the playfield would go slam down in the machine. So I had to get that fixed as soon as possible. So I bought a new bracket for these 6803 machines from Marco Specialties and screwed that on there. So now it's actually being held up by both brackets. And that new bracket is actually better than the original Bally one because this bracket is allowed to bend a little bit, you can see, but they didn't want it to bend too far. So they put a little piece of foam there to stop it from severely bending itself. But on these new brackets, they have a little metal piece that's welded to the bracket that pinches very tightly against the playfield wood so that it is very rigid. There's hardly any bend at all. These brackets don't have any sort of support like that, so these are built a little better, and I thought maybe I'd replace this bracket as well, but I'm just gonna leave this in right now. If this one does break, I'll replace it, but I got a real good bracket here, and so now the playfield is actually held up how it's supposed to be. All right, now let's go ahead and pull out the CPU board and replace the transistors that I think are bad. And that is this top right board right here. I went through all these boards and the inside of the back box in the first video, and it seemed like the power supply here and the soundboard there had been recapped before. This one I could tell also had a little bit of rework done, including some of the lamp transistors, but we're going to go ahead and take that board out again so I can replace the ones that I think are not working right. All right, so here's our board again, and I have figured out that we have 3 bad lamp transistors on this board. And these aren't actually transistors, they're silicon-controlled rectifiers, but I'll probably end up just calling them transistors because that's what most other machines use, it's easier. So here's how I found out that we have 3 bad ones. When I put the positive on pin 2 of the SCR and the negative on pin 1, you can see we get a 0.7 volt voltage drop. And it is like that for every single one except for the bad ones. And if I go ahead and flip the polarity, since it's a diode, there should be nothing. And you can see there's nothing. So every one of these, if I do this, it has 0.7. But on one of the bad ones, I'm going to put it on Q33, which is one of the bad ones. You see we get 1.4 volts. And if I go ahead and flip the polarity, we also get 1.4 volts. And there's 2 other ones that do the same thing. The other one is Q59. So we get 1.6, and if I flip it around, we also get 1.6. So there's a second one. And then this one right here, Q37, is kind of sort of doing that. If I go ahead and put the probes on there, we get 1.1 volts. That's a little higher than all the rest. And if I flip them over on this one, we do actually get nothing still. So I think this one is failing. It's not completely dead, but the ones that are dead are Q33 and Q59. Q33 controls the A light in the word lab and the Playfield 9 times score multiplier light, and both of those have never worked. And the one that died when I was changing the voltmeter lights was Q59, because that is the one that controls the 700 light and the bonus number 7 indicator. And then I noticed on the 4 bubble bonus lights on the edges of the machine that the 20,000 light looked kind of dim, and this is the transistor that is controlling both of those 20,000 lights, and this transistor acting up like that would explain why those are dim. So we have 3 bad transistors on this board, and let's go ahead and replace them with new ones. And so these are the SCRs that you'll need to replace these lamp drivers. It's part number 2N5060. There's 1. There's 2. And there is the 3rd. So now I can go ahead and put those new ones in. All right, those are all done. I can go ahead and clean it up a little bit with some Q-tips and alcohol, but the 3 new transistors, or SCRs, have been soldered in there, and there. So all the lights that weren't working should work now. So let's go ahead and put this board back in the machine and see what changed. All right, the CPU board is back in, and so let's go ahead and turn the machine on and see if more lights work. So the ones we're looking for are the A light in the word lab. I'm not sure if the L light's going to work. I think I'm going to have to do some more troubleshooting with that. We're looking for the 700 light in the voltmeter, the 7 light on the bonus indicators, and we're looking for the 20 light on the bubble bonus lights on the right and left-hand side to not be dim. They were a little bit dimmer than the rest of them. So let's go ahead and see if they work. Okay, so we still don't have our A light, and that's because I have to mess with the socket. They were kind of loose back here when I was first trying to mess with them, so that's okay. We don't have our number 7, but we do have our 700 light, so I just have to mess with the socket a little bit and it should come back. But look here, we have our 9X Playfield light that has never flashed like that before. So that tells me that replacing those SCRs did the trick, and I just have to wiggle the LEDs in the sockets a little bit. I can also tell that the 20 lights are now the same brightness as all of the other lights, so replacing that half-failed transistor was necessary. So we had 3 bad SCRs on the CPU board. And yep, moving that number 7 light around made it come right back. So all the lights in this machine are now working just fine, except for the L and the A light in the word lab. And what I want to do to get better access to those is take the 2 bolts out of the back box and fold it down so that I can reach through the big hole where the wires are and get real good access to those lights, because it's almost impossible to see what you're doing when you just have the playfield open. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We'll take a look and see what we can do to fix those. So I decided I would remove the 2 displays just in case when this thing folds down, I don't want it to put any pressure on those displays and break them. I'll also put a blanket on top of the playfield to protect it. Well, with the back box down, I can see the problem with both of those lights right away. And there are those 3 lights. You can see the middle one, the diode has broken off of the other side. And on this one, the wire has broken off. You can see it right there. So it looks like I just have to resolder the wire and the diode, and then those 2 lights should work again. Well, I've confirmed that that is the only problem. I put the diode back on and the wire back on the other one, just touched it, and it made the lights come up. So that's our only problem, but these sockets are absolutely destroyed. Someone obviously was back here and did a terrible job trying to get these things working. Because those 2 sockets, I had to melt the plastic on them a little bit to even get to the metal, because you can see on the good one here, there's supposed to be a little tab that the wire solders on. The tabs on these 2 are completely broken. So I'm just going to go ahead and replace the socket, because it is not worth my time trying to make these work, because I'm having such a hard time with it. And I really don't like these type of sockets. I don't think they're very reliable. So what I'm going to try to do is replace them with a standard bayonet socket. I'll see what I can do to get these to fit and screw back in the original location. But if that wasn't enough, the transistor that I replaced on the CPU board blew up again, because at one point I had the wire soldered to the socket for the A light and it wasn't lighting for some reason, and I went up to the playfield and I took a look at the 9X playfield light and it was out. And I don't know how that happened because I had the power off. So obviously I'm going to have to replace that SCR again. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, get these sockets replaced, and I'll show you what it looks like at the end. So this is the type of socket that I used. You can see it'll screw right back into the wood like the original socket, and it has a spot for the diode to go, and it's just a standard bayonet type socket. So I went ahead and I replaced those 2 sockets. You can see they are mounted right there. I put 2 cool white LEDs in, And if I go ahead and turn the machine on, you can see now they all work. And that is the first time it has ever done that. The shutter speed on the camera I can see is not correct, so that's why it looks like they're going in and out. But all three of the lab lights work now. So let's go ahead and put the back box back up and see what that looks like. And there we go. As you can see, all three of the lab lights are now working. And so with that fixed, Strange Science is now problem-free. Although there was one thing that I did to these displays. I noticed that the sticky pads that held the actual displays to the PCB had failed, and so these displays were kind of loose like that, and they're rubbing against the back glass. So what I did is I put a little bit of hot glue on the tops and the sides of both displays just to keep them sturdy, and that worked great. They are now nice and firm against those boards, and so they will no longer rub on the back glass. And so, now that all the problems are fixed with this machine, it is now time to start the Playfield restoration. With rubbers that are cracking and falling apart, LEDs where their plastic surrounds are literally breaking to pieces, and just dirt in general on the Playfield, we need to get this thing fully disassembled so that it can have the maintenance it's been wanting for a long time. And that is what it looks like with everything removed. And if you're wondering, yes, I do actually intend on putting this machine back together again. I probably went a little farther than most people would with the disassembly, but this Playfield is extremely dirty. If I go close up in some places, you'll be able to tell. Like right there, you can see all the buildup of dirt, especially there. And the whole Playfield is like that, so it definitely needs a deep clean. And in order to do that, I had to remove basically everything from it. And I also need to replace all of the LEDs on the top side of the Playfield because there's a lot of them that are just breaking apart. I can tell that these LEDs here are not Comet Pinball LEDs, and the plastic surround is just disintegrating. Like if I move it, it just comes apart in a million pieces, and there's at least 5, maybe more, that are like that. So obviously they're just cheap LEDs, and there was one up here by the voltmeter that I saw that was quite literally coming apart like that. And I don't know how that one still works, but it does. So all those, which is basically all of them, I'm gonna replace. And there's at least 4 different types of cool white LEDs above the Playfield, which I don't know why. You can see there's one type. Here's another type. Here's another type. This is different than these. And if we look way back here, there's another type. So I'm going to change all of those out with just some Comet Pinball frosted LEDs. I'll add in a little bit more color and it's going to look a lot better than how it looked the first time. And here's all the stuff I pulled out of it. I did my best to try to keep the related parts together, keep all the screws together, so I have a basic idea of how I'm going to put the machine back together. I took well over 100 pictures of the machine as I was disassembling it, so I shouldn't have any trouble with that. You can see some of the parts are extremely dirty, like the upper ramp. Some of the plastics are a little bit yellowed and dirty, and everything just needs to be cleaned. And that includes the pieces for the apron, which I have here. And for whatever reason, the plunger rubber was disintegrating a lot more than the rest of the rubbers. And you can see on some of the parts that are right next to it, you can see those little white specks. Those came off of the plunger rubber, and there's a lot more of that on the machine itself. You can see right next to the plunger, there's a lot more of those disintegrating rubber bits that came off of the rubber. So that'll all get vacuumed up and cleaned off. And I decided to keep these two metal pieces in place because it's a big hassle to get these off. And you're probably wondering, wasn't disassembling this entire thing a hassle already? Kind of, but I'd have to take a lot more stuff just to get these two metal pieces off, and I can easily just clean around those. And the same goes for the out-hole coil. I can just clean around that and it'll be just fine. So that's the Playfield. The inside of the game is also extremely filthy. You can see all the dirt that's accumulated on the bottom, so that's going to have to be vacuumed out real well. And of course, every rubber is going to have to be replaced because the vast majority of them look like that, dirty and cracked and falling apart. So I have a kit, and all those rubbers on the posts and for everything else in the Playfield will get replaced. So I'm going to go ahead and start cleaning up all these pieces, clean up the Playfield, and make everything look as close to brand new as I can possibly get it. I'll replace all the LEDs, clean all the dirt off, and I'll give the whole thing a couple coats of wax to make it shiny and protect the finish of the Playfield, because as you can see, it's already worn down quite a bit, so I want to protect it because I want this thing to last. All right, so I pulled out all the LEDs from above the Playfield, and you know how I said that there were about 4 or 5 of them that I thought were breaking apart? Well, that number turned out to be 21. There were 21 LEDs that when I pulled them out of their sockets, they broke into a million pieces. And it's a certain type of light that did that. Here's one of them that didn't break. So if you recognize this light, don't buy these because apparently after they age, the plastic around them gets really brittle. The other kinds of lights that were in there did not break at all. So obviously that's just a really cheap LED. And you can see inside some of the sockets. Is that one of them? Yes. You can see all the broken little pieces inside it. So I'm gonna have to vacuum out almost all of those sockets because obviously that can't be in there when the game is on. So that's another thing I'm gonna have to deal with. And here's something else that I noticed. That's a light lens, and I've never seen that light come on. And there was a LED back there. I pulled it out and it seemed fine. So I went ahead and put it in one of the other sockets and it lit up. So obviously we have a socket problem with that load Adams light that I'm gonna have to figure out while I work on this machine. But what I wanna do right now is clean up all these pieces so that we can start cleaning up the Playfield and making it look nice. All right, so now that all those pieces are cleaned up, it's now time to start cleaning up and restoring the playfield. And I did figure out what was wrong with this light socket back here. You can see it's working now. I pulled the LED out and I unscrewed the socket and took a look at the connections, and it seemed like they were very loose. So I took a screwdriver and bent those connections in so that it would grip the LED more, and that made it work. So that light is now working, and so that is every single light in the system working now. So let's go ahead and start cleaning up the playfield. And of course, we can't forget about underneath the playfield. Look how filthy it is under here. And all those little white specks that you see, those are all pieces from those LEDs that have broken and disintegrated into a million pieces. So that is how bad those LEDs are. And then down there, I believe that is from the degrading plunger rubber. So I'm gonna go ahead and vacuum this out, and we'll see how good it looks after I'm done doing that. All right, now it's time for everyone's favorite part, the reassembly process. So first I'm going to start with the apron just so that it's easier for me to keep track of all the playfield pieces. So we'll go ahead and get this assembled first, and then we will reassemble the playfield. All right, so now the apron is back together and it came out looking really good, especially the metal pieces. You can see that one down there. It's like a mirror finish. Looks great. But I did want to show something that I was able to fix. Earlier in the video, I said that this post right here next to the ball saver was missing. Well, there was another piece, an identical little nylon piece kind of up in this area here. This was the piece I was missing, just this little white nylon post. And that post was attached right here. But I went through my pinball parts and I found another one that is the same spacing as this post here. You can see it goes down to the same level. And I'm just going to use that instead. It's going to fit perfectly. And I put a couple washers in between the plastic and the screw, just because the hole in the plastic was really big. The screw almost went through the hole. So just put a couple of those just to make sure it's going to tighten. And so it's not going to look any different when that plastic piece is in. And I found a Phillips screw because I've looked at pictures of other Strange Sciences and they just have a screw going through this post. So I found a nice screw, and so that is going to go right there. So they'll screw in and that post will be restored. And in this hole, there's supposed to be just a normal metal wood screw post like this one here. And I looked in the hole, you can see what looks like to be part of a screw in there. And at first I thought that was part of the old post, like it had broken off in the hole. But no, someone actually put a screw in there from underneath the Playfield, and it's got a little plastic piece that holds wires in it. This piece right here, that is screwed through the same hole that that post is supposed to go through. So this should not be here. I'm going to go ahead and remove it so that I can put a post back where it's supposed to go. So the post is going to go right there. And then just put one of these little rubbers over it, just like that. So now we have a post back where it's supposed to go. And I'll go ahead and screw in this other one too, since I'm here. And with both of these posts screwed back in, that is all of the missing posts that this machine needed. So now it is time to assemble a Playfield. And so this completes the restoration series on this Bally Strange Science pinball machine from 1986. This is personally my favorite restoration because it's more of a complex machine than the other ones that I've worked on, and I'm glad I was able to make it look as nice as it does. It's in very good shape. So thanks for watching this restoration series, and I will see you in my next video.
Why?